It's Tuesday, August 24th, and the time for your Barbados Today morning news update. Health officials have denied a claim linking a recent sudden death to a vaccine in its latest move to discourage the circulation of fake news surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic. A voice note making the rounds on social media over the weekend claimed that a woman who received her second COVID-19 shot had collapsed and died a day after getting the vaccine. The Ministry of Health and Wellness said while it is aware of the case, it would not breach its own confidentiality rules about patients' medical records in order to refute what it described as an irresponsible social media post that was based on absolutely incorrect information relating to the individual's vaccination status. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Kenneth George, after extending sympathy to the family of the deceased woman, stressed that while circumstances surrounding her passing will be fully investigated, at this stage it is being treated as a sudden death with no link to any COVID-19 vaccine. Many of the world's leading universities were established using money generated via the slave trade and as such should get more involved in the reparations process. Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Professor Sir Hilary made the comments as he addressed the fourth annual celebration of the UNESCO Day for Remembering the Atlantic Slave Trade and its abolition, put on by the Mayor of London's office. Sir Hilary said while some universities, like the University of London, have been doing more research into the history of the slave trade, they need to go further.
Having collected the evidentiary basis of their own crimes and the way in which the universities participated in these global crimes, their main impulse is to run away from the consequences of their research. And so, research and run has now become the standard within British universities. Reparatory justice is not a part of their agenda. Research and run, not research and repair, not research and restitute, not research and restore. Research and run is the standard refrain and effects. And so there's a tremendous amount of work to be done because no university can be excellent if it is also not ethical.
Thanking UK philanthropist Bridget Freeman for her recent $500,000 donation to the UWI, Sir Hilary declared that this is the century of reparations.
There is no doubt that reparations is going to be the greatest political movement of this 21st century. There's no doubt about it. The whole world, the whole colonized world, the enslaved world, the brutalized world, the racially oppressed world will put together this movement for justice, and it will be a global movement, and all over the globe there's going to be demand for reparations. This century, we insist, must be the century of humanity.
Officials at the Barbados Light and Power say the need for full access to vital communication networks in the midst of a disaster remains extremely essential. And to this end, company officials on Monday donated 90 radios worth $16,500 to members of the Department of Emergency Management and the District Emergency Organization. BLMP's Manager of Communications, Jackie Marshall-Clark, said the decision was made following the passage of Hurricane Elsa last month.
Light and Power had a situation where we had several customers across the island without power, and for several days. And we did all we could using every means trying to get information to them. But of course, the people in some of those districts, we just couldn't reach. Because they didn't have a radio, they didn't have the TV, they couldn't hear. Maybe the phones were all out of charge by that time. And if we knew the DEOs were fully existing and working, the thing would have been to get the information to the DEMs and down to the DEOs and into the districts. Well, let me tell you, our plan then to provide them with these radios is making sure and seeking to ensure that should we have another situation, I can't find any wood to knock, I'm hoping it doesn't happen, but should it, that we are better prepared and we have the help and they have the tools to make it happen.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
To news from the region, Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister Dr. Hilary is urging parents to have their children fully vaccinated ahead of the new school year. Government is moving to reopen schools next month on the conditions that there is a significant increase in persons being vaccinated and the number of positive cases and deaths decline. More from TTT News.
Left it up to the responsibility of parents to be reasonable, to be understanding, to be caring, and to be responsible. And if it gets to that, the government will have no difficulty in intervening on the children's behalf, as we've done with measles, with mumps.
Dr. Rowley assures that all children will have an education, but notes that whether a child is vaccinated or not could determine whether that will be virtual or physical classes.
So those who have 1,000,001 reasons from Facebook to not get your children vaccinated, that is your right. But by the same token, other parents have rights for their children, and the government has a right and a responsibility. Every child will be guaranteed an education, but the nature of that education, the face-to-face contact, will be determined by the health and safety considerations.
In more developments, United Nations spokesman Stefan Dujarric said the International Organization for Migration has launched a flash appeal for US $15 million to help Haitian authorities with providing temporary shelter, mental health support, and COVID-19 prevention for some 170,000 families left critically vulnerable by the recent 7.2 magnitude earthquake.
IOM has already set up bases in the most affected areas in additional hubs in Jérémie, Lacaille, and Miragoan. It is also using satellite imagery to analyze damage and distribute thousands of plastic sheets, hygiene kits, blankets, collapsible jerry cans, and kitchen to those impacted. And as we mentioned, the Deputy Secretary General Mina Mohammed wrapped up her visit on Friday afternoon. She assured Haitians that the UN remains committed to working under the leadership of national and local authorities to assist not only in providing life-saving support for the immediate response to the earthquake, but also during the reconstruction phase.
And finally, the US is being pressed to allow more time for evacuation from Taliban-controlled Afghanistan as the deadline for its withdrawal draws near. The US must leave by August 31st based on an agreement with the Taliban. More from Reuters TV.
With thousands of Afghans and foreigners still scrambling to leave Kabul, U.S. President Joe Biden is expected to decide on extending a looming deadline for evacuations as early as Tuesday. That's according to an administration official who spoke to Reuters on Monday, and two U.S. officials have said it is likely Biden will continue evacuations beyond August 31st. Beyond the need to remove thousands of Americans, citizens of allied countries, and Afghans who worked with U.S. forces, Department of Defense officials say it would still take days to fly out the 6,000 troops deployed to aid the evacuation. House Intelligence Chair Adam Schiff said Monday he did not believe the evacuation would be completed by August 31st.
I think it's possible, but I think it's very unlikely, given the number of Americans who still need to be evacuated.
Some Biden advisors have argued against extending the self-imposed deadline for security reasons. Meanwhile, Britain and France are among those calling for the deadline to be eased. A Taliban official said foreign forces have not yet sought an extension, and it would not be granted if they did. Washington said negotiations were continuing. So far, the U.S. has facilitated the removal of roughly 48,000 people. But U.S. officials told Reuters that almost everything would have to go perfectly to remove every American citizen from Afghanistan by August 31st, citing concerns about U.S. citizens reaching the airport, terrorist attacks, and complicated processing times.
That's news. But for the very latest, visit us at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media in bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. And you can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM.